Hello, it's Thursday, and that can mean only one thing over here on MongoDB.tv. Welcome to MongoDB TV Cloud Connect. I'm Shane McAllister. I'm a developer advocate here in the developer relations team at MongoDB, and we're delighted to have you join us, this time streaming live on both LinkedIn and YouTube, so you're very welcome. Firstly, while we're waiting to get underway, let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you. And once we're underway, please, if you have any questions for our hosts and our guests, drop them into the chat and we'll try and answer them live. This is being recorded and will be available on MongoDB's YouTube channel once it's over. So if you can't stay for all of this live stream, or you want to join in later on or revisit something, you can do so there. And if you're not watching live and you're watching this recording, we do welcome you. We can't answer any of the questions and comments that you have in the live chat, obviously, but do leave some comments on YouTube and we'll try and answer those when we get to see them. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you haven't, why not? Before we get on with this Cloud Connect show, I just wanted to highlight some of the other shows that we do on MongoDB TV. We have 3 weekly shows, Cloud Connect being one of those, where we have a rotating slot each week, focuses on a different partner and to show how we build together. We have a show called MongoDB Update, which is a short weekly update sharing product news, announcements, content, updates, and events. And then we do MongoDB Podcast Live, which brings our podcast guests into the video era. Yeah, we do have a podcast. Myself and my colleague Mike Lynn do that. So check out podcast.mongodb.com and please do subscribe, and better yet, leave us a review there. Also, there are 2 monthly shows as well too. One is called Learning with Luce, where we join Luce Carter, and she is learning with and from our developer community live. And then we have MongoDB Office Hours with Rick Houlihan, which features key MongoDB topics, discussions, and we take on live Q&A on the air. All of those shows can be seen in the live tab of our MongoDB YouTube channel if you want to check out any of the previous ones or the ones that we have forthcoming. Anyway, today's show is all about fun and games. What's not to like about that? And I can't have fun on my own, so I brought along some colleagues and guests to share in this madness. As ever, Dominic Frei is joining me from MongoDB. He's based here in Ireland along with me. Then we're jumping right across to Austin, Texas, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
Austin.
Where we have AM Grobelny from AWS. And then we're jumping off to somewhere, and he can explain exactly where himself. Lorenzo Ciaravola is joining us from Switzerland. He's hiding out there for reasons unknown, but he might let us know during the show as well, too. Dominic, AM, Lorenzo, you're very welcome.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. And also, I had no idea that you do the podcast, Shane. I want to now go just listen to the podcast just to hear your voice. I mean, it's just so soothing.
Excellent. One more subscriber listener. We're all for that.
Yeah, I'm in. You got me.
Perfect.
So why? That's a fake background, right? Like, it's got to be fake.
That's right. I want to correct that. He said I'm in Switzerland. I actually mean the basement of New York, in my New York apartment. That's where I live. This is a fake background. As you can see, if I wave my hand, you'll see the little bit of green screen behind. You see the flickering right there. You saw it? Yeah. So happy to be on the show. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's great to have you. So before we get started and dive into the world of game days, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about your own backgrounds? AM first, and then Lorenzo.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm a developer advocate for the GameDay team. So I know at least you and Dominic know what that is. I don't know. I'm not sure if Lorenzo knows what that means, because he's like, what does this guy do most of the time on our team meetings? Just kidding. So dev advocate, that means I'm out there trying to get people engaged with the product that is GameDay, right? So playing from a participant perspective, working with you all from a builder perspective, right? So you actually, to build a GameDay, I don't know if people realize this or not, because building a GameDay has been typically reserved for AWS employees at this point. We've opened the doors to our APN partners like MongoDB, but it actually requires development work, right? You have to develop it. You're interacting with an API through an SDK that the team has built. There's a lot of pieces there. So that's part of my job, is I go out there and collect feedback, help make the product better, build some stuff myself, and just generally talk about GameDay nonstop. And as you can tell, I'm really good at talking, because I haven't stopped yet to let Lorenzo do his intro.
And before we jump across to that entirely fake Swiss background of Lorenzo's, how long have you been doing the game days then, AM?
Technically, I started working with GameDay back in 2019. I worked on a partner GameDay with a little group called Gremlin back in 2019. I've been at AWS since 2018, so I didn't immediately jump into GameDay because I hadn't heard of it. I didn't hear about it until 2019, but it's been around for a long time. Again, I think this surprises some people too. It's like 10 plus years now that GameDay's been around. But yeah, prior to AWS, I was mostly in like SDE roles. Prior to that, I was a 4th grade elementary school teacher. So that's a story probably for another time. But
that's another show, right? Yeah. Jumping across to the Alpine background of Lorenzo. Lorenzo, you're a senior partner solutions architect at AWS, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I joined Amazon about 5 years ago, but only in the last 2 or 3 years, I joined the AWS GameDay team as a PSA, as a partner solutions architect. And I'm helping our partners integrate their products or their solutions with AWS, specifically with the AWS GameDay platform that we're going to talk more about it today. That's pretty much about me. I'm based in New York. That's for real. So that's all. And well, one more thing I like. Yes, go ahead.
I would have bought it anyway. Your audio quality is so good. There's no way you're out there in the open.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, this technology is amazing. If you can see, it's also adjusting the light. It's getting dark little by little. This is all generative AI. It's generating the sound in the background of the ship, and the flies going all over my face. So it's really amazing technology.
It's generating Lorenzo.
It's giving it away though, because the background is getting darker and you're still perfectly lit. So something's wrong there.
Well, it's all generative AI. It's adapting constantly. It's a complex algorithm.
You just throw out the word algorithm and that
For
algorithm.
completeness, Dominic from our
I love
MongoDB office here in Dublin. I know you've been on the streams before, familiar face to many, but your role here in MongoDB and your connection with GameDay.
Well, those are like some big questions there.
Yeah, what do you do, Dominic?
Yeah, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm just like coming up with new ideas every day and just like work on what I think might make sense. No, but I just noticed we're all kind of like new-ish in recent roles, I guess. I mean, I've been with MongoDB. See, my brain doesn't even work anymore. Energy's gone for the out of mana. So I've been with MongoDB for 2.5 years now. I've been a software engineer for like, I don't know, 15 years or so. I have stopped counting. But I also just joined the developer advocacy team about a year ago now, maybe a year and 2 months or so. So yeah, also quite new in that department. And I had the really lucky coincidence to meet Lorenzo last year and be able to work together with him on the GameDay quest that we're going to look at today. And that was a hell of fun. And I hope we can provide some, not just some fun and entertaining time, but also some learning experience. And I'm looking forward to that today.
Excellent.
That's so weird. GameDay is not actually intended to be fun. What happened there?
It was more accidental.
Okay.
I certainly didn't mean it to be fun. I really wanted to do a proper workshop and teach people stuff. But then with all those unicorns flying around, the story just automatically gets like so hilarious. There's just nothing you can do about that.
You've already dropped the unicorn lore out there.
Oh no one said anything yet. Jeez.
I think the fun was probably in reference to working with Lorenzo, though, as opposed to the platform, perhaps, right?
That's what
There's fun
you
all
said.
around.
I didn't. You said that.
It's mandatory fun.
So GameDay. We've mentioned it a number of times now. I want a definitive definition. What is a GameDay? Where did it come from? Who came up with it? What are they all about? AM, Lorenzo, you can pick. Who's answering this one?
I think it would be fun to give each of our answers because I think it changes. Who should go
on
first?
Your viewpoint? Yeah, right. So
you go ahead, AM.
Okay, I switch back and forth between my I always like to. I was a teacher. I explained things with analogies a lot. Also, I just wanted to point out in chat, I already noticed Richard Boyd is here trolling me, friend of the show, where I met you two. Step Up Your Game Day. He's on the show. Yeah, there we go. There's Richard.
That's proper trolling happening already. Yeah.
He said he spent 4 years in the 4th grade too. Earlier, saw that. Big fan of Richard's. Anyway. So what is GameDay? Like I said, I go back and forth. I've called it like an escape room in the cloud. I don't know if everywhere on the planet has escape rooms at this point, but an escape room, if you've never experienced one or never heard of it, is kind of like it's like a mystery, an intentional mystery that you and a group of friends come and try and solve these little puzzles, and then it progresses a storyline throughout the day. I've also started calling it the AWS Danger Room, which if you're a big X-Men fan, you know what the Danger Room is. If you're not, go watch some of those old 90s X-Men cartoons. They're phenomenal. But it's like a real environment, right, that simulates the dangers that you're going to face as you are building out your infrastructure and your solutions, so that when you actually face the real challenges, it's not as dangerous anymore. It's not as scary, right? You faced it in a safe environment where bad things can't happen. So that's how I explain it. What about you, Lorenzo?
Well, I won't give you the actual definition. You can find it online, I'm sure. So I'll give you my experience. I experienced myself at the game day for the first time as a participant. And when I left the event, I felt like I had learned something new. And this is contrary, at least in my personal experience, to attending workshops, for example, where I would just follow a list of instructions and complete everything. And at the end, I realized, cool, but I I just got good at following instructions. I didn't learn anything. So this one instead, perhaps you don't complete the whole thing, all the challenges that we present you during the game day. Maybe you complete even 20%, but you go home with the feeling that, yes, with that little part I completed, I learned it and I can apply it to my workplace. And it's totally different concept that personally, at least, I haven't seen it anywhere else. So that's why I got so enthusiastic and I decided to join the team.
Yeah, so Richard's upping his trolling altogether.
I told you.
Saying they think they call them escape pubs in Ireland. The point of a pub in Ireland is you're not supposed to escape from it. You're supposed to stay in it. The only time they throw you out is at the very, very end of the night, which is usually a lot later than most countries. So there you go, Richard. We're looking forward to participating with you throughout this stream. So I think for me, the experience, and I've seen the game days firsthand, I've seen them run, and I go back to what Lorenzo is saying. I think in many instances, I'm a big believer in the show, don't tell, but actually doing something is even better again. So you're stuck in the mix. I don't think, I've seen the crowds. You bring together people in person, right, AM? Generally, they're in a room, they're forming teams. It's, as you said, a low risk, safe learning environment with fun and creativity thrown on top of it.
Yeah, something that Lorenzo and I both did not mention here either is oftentimes, again, there's a lot of ways that game days get used, but a lot of the game days that people are probably familiar with if they played before are actually competitive, right? So these are how do you know in life, Shane and Dominic, whether you're doing good things or bad things, if no one is giving you points to tell you, right? Like scoring points and there's a scoreboard. Like life is so complicated because if we just got points every time we did something right, and if we did something wrong, they took points away, we would know so much more about ourselves.
I mean, I don't know how it works on the other side of the pond, but over here we got laws. They tell you if you're doing something good or bad, but let's go with the points. I like that idea.
I don't like to.
We're heading down the road of a Black Mirror episode here with the points, right?
The points floating above your head and telling you where you are all the time. I love that idea.
Yeah.
So the teams are competing. There's points. I've seen the leaderboard. I've seen the scoreboard. How, everyone, and developers in particular, I think, are very competitive when it comes to their technical skills and the technical challenges. Does it get heated?
Yeah, I mean, what doesn't get heated nowadays? Yes. I would say it gets heated. Sorry, Richard is already.
You were reading the same thing I just did.
I got points on my drivers. Yes, Richard, that counts until they take it away entirely. Yeah, so it does get heated. There are actually there have emerged teams that are now practicing, are like getting ready for competitions. It's almost like if you go look at video games and look at esports, there's kind of a little bit of a community like that being built around game day because of things like last year we had the World Championships run by a guy named Gunnar Grosch, who's a DA here, a developer advocate at AWS. And there were the prize at the World Championship was a trip for you and your team to reinvent.
Oh, wow.
Pretty sweet prize.
Big, decent prize. Yeah.
Yeah. So, people are getting pretty serious about the competition, but that's not all that we intend when we put out game day, right? It's not just all about these competitive sides too. Game days are run in many different venues. Richard. Okay, I'm going to stop reading Richard's comments. Anyway, so they're run in all different types of venues, right? Oftentimes the competitive ones are at the large AWS events. The World Championship was all virtual, I believe. So we do put on virtual game days. We put on game days for our customers. So if you're an AWS customer, you have an account team, you can request your account team to put on a game day for you, actually. It's kind of one of these under the radar little bonuses that people don't necessarily know about. You can get a private game day put on for you by your account team.
So they come on site, on premise, and run the game day privately for those accounts?
It could be on site, might be virtual, just depending
Okay.
upon what works out best for everybody. We're doing game days at AWS user groups now too. Love to. I know you all used one of the lofts, the AWS lofts, to put on
We did
your
indeed.
quest as well. So yeah, I mean, look, we put these game days on, and the intention behind all of them is to get people hands-on with tech, right? The competitive ones, though, they're serious. They get real for sure.
And there's a bit of a backstory to the original concept of the game day within AWS. Was thought up in the back of a car on the way to an event or something?
I mean, there's all types of AWS legends out there. I've worked with a few of the people that were very early on. We're talking this is like 10 years ago, right? Game Day is way different than it was back then. Now there's a full team behind Game Day at this point. But yeah, some of the first iterations, I don't even know if it was called Game Day back then, to be honest with you, were, SAs like Lorenzo putting together stuff to get customers more hands-on with AWS products. And a few of them are kind of legendary. We've got Kyle, who is like I guess he's our skip level. How many levels are there in between us and Kyle, Lorenzo? 3, I think.
I stopped the count.
Yeah.
It's always good to give a shout out to the upper echelons. So yeah, you're name checking him here anyway. That will do good.
Well, Kyle wasn't always in the upper echelons, especially not when Game Day started. I like to think Kyle's ascent into the upper echelons of powers were because he got named the CEO of Unicorn Rentals, which is the fictional, I have to say that part quietly, fictional, I said it out loud, company that is behind Game Day. So when you come join and play a Game Day, you're actually a new hire at this place called Unicorn Rentals. And Kyle is the CEO of that company. He's used throughout. Like you may see, if you play a Game Day, you may see pictures of Kyle. For example, one of Lorenzo's, I shouldn't say one of your favorites and speak for you, but you've recommended it to me many times, and we played it on Step Up Your Game Day. The Where in the World quest features Kyle very heavily. It's a fun quest. But yeah, so Kyle was very early on. There was a guy, Dave Rockamora, who was very early on in the inception of Game Day, and a guy named Mike Ruiz. And yeah, one of the stories is they were on the way to play a game. Again, this was like 10 years ago. This is before our current state. But yeah, Dave was coding in the back of a car on the way for one of the game days that they were putting on. There we go. Look at that.
Live and real, and some cars in the foreground. So that's obviously was on the way there. It was all being dreamt up.
I gotta say, Lorenzo's generative AI background is generating like flies and stuff. It's incredible.
There's a tractor that decided to come behind me. I don't know if you can hear the noise.
I thought you were in full control and programmed everything that happened. And it comes in.
With this artificial intelligence, you never know what they're gonna create next, right?
So we will get into Unicorn Rentals when we go through the demo. We will be showing a demo of the game day that we built for AWS reInvent last year. With hopefully, fingers crossed, we get to do something like that again as well too. But there are other game days as well. You have an F1 game day. You have a Riot Games League of Legends game day. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah. And Lorenzo, please jump in at any time, or else I'm just going to keep talking. Like I don't have an off switch, man. Like you have to interrupt me. Anyway, F1 is what was, I believe, part of, if not the entirety of the World Championships last year too. But they've had some of their own competitions as well. So F1 built a quest through their solution architect who works with them, a guy named Nick. I love Nick. He's a lot of fun to work with, and a couple of the developer advocates here at AWS as well. So a guy named Boaz worked on that a lot. And one of the competitions, they gave a prize to go to one of these F1 events. And
Wow.
I mean, look, I've seen a lot of the F1 stuff now since they've gotten so involved in game day, and it looks really exciting. But when I talk to Nick all the time, he'll like drop these names that I'm supposed to know. And like people who love this stuff are, would freak out and be like, oh my, I can't believe you're talking to that person. He doesn't get that response from me because what do you think about F1? And I think it disappoints him a lot of the time.
You are supposed to know these people. There is only 20 of these drivers in the whole world, right? Is it drivers or is it team bosses and other names he's dropping?
I guess he doesn't
You don't know.
Shane, you're asking really difficult questions here. You told me this was going to be just like a really easy interview, and you're asking me a hardball question.
F1,
I don't know.
F1, you're in Austin, right?
I am, yeah.
You have a race on your doorstep.
I know, we have a track here. I am aware. You can ride go-karts on it.
That doesn't help, though. I grew up next to a track as well, and all the names I know from Formula One are like 20 years old. I have no clue who's driving anymore these days. So completely M on AM side there. Come on.
Yeah, I'm originally
Fair enough.
I'm originally from Pompeii in Italy. I've never been in Pompeii ruins. They're just there.
That's just the old stuff. That's the old stuff.
I'm kind of happy with the comparison between an F1 racing track and the Pompeii ruins. I think that's pretty incredible. I was going to say
the things on your doorstep that you don't feel any need to go to visit because they're on your doorstep. Whereas if you were visiting that city as a tourist, you would obviously go to see it, right? Maybe not the F1 tracks, not necessarily much of an attraction when there isn't any cars on it, perhaps. But in the F1 game day, what were you doing? Was it a fictional company and all of that? No.
So in the F1 game day, I've never played it. Let's be clear. So a lot of this is secondhand knowledge that I have of the game. But my understanding of it is you're actually using data to help drivers really improve their times, right? Based off of, I've had this now explained to me by 3 different people. I actually got to interview at the London Summit. At a lot of the AWS summits, they have the F1 driving experience. And
there were big queues when I saw it, so I was not going to spend an hour trying to get into the F1 driving experience, I'm afraid.
Oh, I'll tell you what, the guy who runs it, I was interviewing him. He told me sometimes those lines get up to 3 hours.
Wow.
For 10 minutes, like you're on the actual thing for 10 minutes. But it's incredible, right? It is. He showed me the steering wheel. Is that the technical term?
I think that's generally the technical term for the thing that moves the car left and right. Yeah,
it makes the car turn different directions. But it had all these buttons and levers and knobs, and he was explaining all of this to me and how it like impacts how the car performs. And I'm like, well, but like you just push the pedal, right? Like that's the car goes. Car go when push pedal. Like that's how I learned to drive. My car doesn't have these like knobs, but he was explaining like, oh yeah, this will like turn off the emergency brake to like certain degrees or something. And I'm like, why would you want to turn that off? That sounds dangerous. And he's like, oh, well, because these are professional drivers. And
yes.
Oh, okay. So not like me or Richard.
Their aptitude for danger is off the charts, right? It is, probably the only sport still left where the possibility of something very, very seriously morbid can happen to you on your day job.
So you're using machine learning basically and a lot of this data to help drivers improve based off of, hey, if you popped this knob that, reduces your emergency brake by 6 degrees, you would perform better or something.
Okay, so it's data heavy then. So it's the analysis. It's. If any sport generates a ton of data, it's Formula One, right? So it's
or
in that way.
esports, like League of Legends, because the League of Legends quest is very similar as well.
Now we're finally getting to the interesting topic.
Nice segue. I like what you've done there. You've done this live streaming stuff before, obviously.
Maybe once or twice. They won't let me back on after I did it once. I'm a professional. There should be varying degrees of how you could turn off the credential checker, Richard. I think, like the buttons, just like,
dial it down.
Yeah.
So the League of Legends, that's more data as well too. Is that about optimizing players or performance in the game, or?
From my understanding too, and Lorenzo, please correct me if you know more about any of these quests, because I haven't actually gotten to play these quests. I'm actually really jealous of people who have. I think they sound really, really cool. But with the Riot one in League of Legends, I believe it's more about predicting the winners. So again, using machine learning, like based off of performance, like how can you predict winners? And I believe at least at one of these events, they were going to utilize the models in the game to help. So that was really cool. And then one of our colleagues on the team, another GameDay PSA, Jim DeHart, was at this event. They were giving away. Dominic, you may know this more than I do. Again, this is an area. I'm not a MOBA player, which I don't even know what MOBA stands for, to be honest with you. I just know the term. It's like a type of video game, right?
BA is the important part, Battle Arena.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the prizes, or the prize at this event, was tickets to go watch the League of Legends championships. What's that? I think it's called Worlds.
I'm not a League player myself, so I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay. All right.
Which why among the four of us, the algorithm would be very easy if Shane or me in the team, the other team wins. So much for the predictions.
You actually don't have to train a model on that. You can just do
you just compare names. It's very easy. It's actually great. So,
but the loudest, most animated team would be us still all the time, not necessarily the most performant team.
If Shane or Dominic then lose, right? Like trigger the lose function. Is that the code?
Do you do the same for other games, like games that I actually enjoy playing and not LOL?
No, we haven't worked with any other game studios at this point. Be really cool to work with anybody, but yeah, I mean, right,
not just because I want to go to the finals and actually watch them, because I love to go to esports events because it's so much fun. I think there are actually a couple of games out there where I see collecting the data and working on that data and doing something with that, with all the tools that the two companies of us could combine. There's so much really cool stuff you could do, and that I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have anything game day related to this game, but I used to be a big World of Warcraft player.
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah. I don't let that devil in my life anymore. But yeah, there's a lot of data there that you could obsess over, right? Like just the auction house data alone.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's crazy. I've coded a bit myself back then, and I basically lost my 20s to World of Warcraft. So it's yeah.
Right. So lots of game days. That's spaces. So
yeah.
Is it constantly touring around the place for the in situ? So you mentioned the AWS summits that were in 20 plus cities around the globe. Is there always a game day at those summits?
Not always, but at a lot of them there are, and we're always shifting and changing where those events happen. I'd say one of the stalwart events for us that has gone on almost every year since the inception of Game Day is reInvent.
Okay.
So this year there is going to be a pretty large event at reInvent. We're working with our friends in DevRel on putting that together, and they're doing a lot of work on making it really, really exciting. The quests are getting built out right now. I don't know how much Lorenzo can share about that, but he is heavily involved in the quests that are being built out. We can't share too much because these quests are going to be used in some of the championship type stuff that's going on this year. But yeah, Lorenzo's been working with those teams. How's it been so far, Lorenzo? I mean, in generic, giving away nothing about the Quest terms.
Sure, right. There's a game about, and then there's the other one about and I can't really tell. It's going to be a surprise because
the middle one sounds really interesting. I want to know more about that middle one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because it's going to be a competition with actual prizes. I mean, big prizes. So really, we cannot give away anything. But the development team is working hard. I mean, we are behind schedule as always, but I'm pretty confident that the night before the event, we're going to be fixing all the problems.
Of course, yeah. And what's crazy though is like we're already working on development, right? Like, in Reinvent's probably still 6 months away at this point, maybe less than 6 months.
It's the end of November, right? Beginning of December, end of November.
That's right.
Yeah. And these are huge events at reInvent in particular. It's a massive room with loads of desks, loads of stations, loads of players, and they can play different game days. They choose the challenges, right? So you've got a menu, for want of a better word, of game day challenges for them, and they compete to win those points and get up that leaderboard, correct?
So that's kind of interesting that you say. So I think, again, we're still working out the structure of how this year is going to go. Things change all the time, obviously. But for this, the competition one, at least, everyone will be playing the same game day, right? Okay. It's very much similar to how the F1 competitions and Riot competitions have gone, right? So, one game day across all the teams that are playing, and the winner takes it all type thing.
Oh wow!
There will be other options too, potentially, to go out and play in a less competitive setting, right? And say like, hey, maybe I don't want all that pressure. There will be other opportunities to play game days that we're still working out the finals on.
Yeah, maybe a distinction to be made that we have mentioned the word quest perhaps before, but we didn't explain what it is. But just to give you an idea, a game day usually comprises of several quests. Each quest is an individual set of challenges that address specific use cases. So perhaps that's the choice where you, Shane, were referring to. Like teams have the choice in theory, because as in life, apparently you have a choice, but you don't really have. Teams have a choice to start with one quest or another, or to complete only 3 out of 4, for example. So that's where the choice is, because each quest addresses different use cases, right? So the participants might read the description of a quest and see that, for example, the service is being used, the use cases, and decide, okay, this is about database migration. I want to tackle this challenge because either I'm familiar with those services and those use cases, or I'm not and I want to learn. So that's where their choice is. It's not really a choice in the sense that at the end of the day, if you want to win the game day, you have to complete as many quests as possible to gather as many points as possible.
As fast as possible, too.
As fast as possible, too. So,
yeah. That's actually, we talk a lot on, I already did one plug, so here's another. We talk a lot on Step Up Your Game Day, my show, that we run on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific on AWS on-air channels.
He's a professional, ever the professional. Got the full plug, the day, the time. Well done.
It's out there. There's a MongoDB episode that's pretty phenomenal. One of our best, of course.
Of course.
But no, we talk a lot about strategy, right? When you're composing a team. So oftentimes people will bring teams. Like I mentioned, there are teams out there that like. I saw this at the London Summit. So I believe it was the team that won the World Championship last year. They were at the London Summit.
Oh, wow.
Still playing game day. So it was really interesting. There was one competition there for the F1 side. They played in that one. And then we had a separate game day that was run with our partner Quests, and they stayed and played that one too. So they played game day probably in total maybe 4 to 5 hours at the London Summit, I would guess.
Oh wow!
So they're serious, clearly.
Yeah, committed.
Yeah. So you can bring your own team. You can walk up and form a team. Stand in line as a single rider, basically, to use theme park terms, and then we'll place you in a team. But there's strategy, right? Like the divide and conquer strategy, right? So
Mhm,
if you've
mhm.
got 4 players on your team, which is the usual number of players on a game day team, each one of you can take a quest based off of, like Lorenzo said, each of these quests have different use cases, different products that they utilize, different areas of expertise needed. So if you got a networking person, put them on the networking quest. If you got a serverless person, put them on the serverless quest. And you can divide and conquer and score a bunch of points fast. And typically quests reward bonus points for completion faster.
Okay. Mhm.
So there's that, right? You want to complete all the quests. You want to get to all the content. And oftentimes you might have to divide it out. But dividing can also hurt you, right? So
Mhm.
there's pros and cons to everybody's strategy.
Yeah, deep into the strategy woods there you could go, all right, and figure out how to go about that. Speaking of strategy, and all of this talk of game days has us wanting to see
You want to see
what
it?
it's all about, right? So, Dominic, would you care to jump on and start sharing? I'll read the narrative for the one that we built with yourselves. And we talked about unicorn rentals. So the narrative before you get stuck into this game, which what draws you in, is with the number of unicorns growing out there, growing day by day. Unicorn Rentals decides to branch out and sell unicorn supplies online, whatever they might be. The new shopping site is almost ready. There's a tiny amount of work to do needed on the database tier, and we're able to pull this off really quickly, leveraging AWS. And we need a database solution that's easy to set up, scalable, secure. This is our plug now, resilient, and that's
What could that
integrated with AWS.
If only there was a database like that.
Called
Right.
MongoDB.
Wait, there is?
There is, of course there is. Anyway, without further ado, and we've been teasing people about game day all along, we're going to play this. Now, Dominic, how long does this usually take a participant to play? Or Lorenzo, you built it with Dominic as well too. So, when you're testing it, how long would it normally take? Because it's going to make it look easy because we have the builders of the Quest game day here with us, but it takes a while in general.
I mean, it depends obviously on who's playing it, but those the game day, for example, that we've been to at reInvent was an event of about 3 hours, and they have like loads of different quests. So some quests that can be done in like 20 minutes, other quests take up to an hour or longer. Lorenzo certainly has better numbers than I do in that case. But for our specific quest, that's what I basically saw. The quickest team was done in, I think, 17, 18 minutes.
Wow,
and other
okay.
teams were still around working on it after 2 hours because they were probably less familiar with what they were doing, or did do something else in the meantime. It's always a bit hard to tell if they actually worked the whole time on it. So like I guess the more longer term ones are a bit hard to tell why, but some teams are just like really, really quick. There's people there, as like AM explained it before, who's so competitive. They just like they sit down and it's just like nail it. It's really crazy if you think about how much time you expect them to take. And if you look at the screen here, I mean, I got it open right here, our quest, and it says average completion time about 45 minutes. If I think about average, it might even be a bit too high, but it's not that much less. Let's say 35 to 40 minutes, like actually average. And then you got teams that are done in 17 minutes. And if I click through it myself, I need 10 minutes alone. So like getting that done in basically twice the amount of time is pretty impressive. But the interesting part is just that there's so many different like knowledge levels around that everyone can have some fun. And I guess
So talk us through where we are now. This is the game day platform, right?
That's it. Lorenzo, do you want to say something about the platform itself before I go into the quest so that we don't jump around?
No, very, very quickly there on the left-hand side panel there, you see a list of quests. For this event, you only see one quest, the MongoDB one, but you can imagine during a full game day experience, that's where you will see listed all the possible quests that you have to choose through. And for each one of them, as you can see for the MongoDB quest, you can read the details of the quest, the use cases, services being used. So that's how you make the decision. Who's going to work on what.
Lorenzo's going to be characteristically humble, as he always is here too. So I'm going to brag on him instead. But if you've played GameDay in the recent past, this may look very different to you because Lorenzo just did a major overhaul on the UI and introduced all kinds of really crazy and interesting improvements to the UI. So one of the things I'll point out right here was this collapsible task, right? So we oftentimes refer to the steps within a quest as tasks, right? And often, there are multiple tasks in a quest. So one of the things Lorenzo just added was the ability to collapse these tasks so you can focus in on just one at a time if you want to.
Yeah, Lorenzo and team.
Lorenzo and team.
Very good.
Lorenzo
Very
and team.
magnanimous.
See? Characteristically humble.
And it might sound simple for those who haven't played GameDay before, but I love that feature and all the other new features that we got recently. And it looks a lot cooler as well. So
Yeah, kudos.
that's really
it looks
super
great.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I will be fair. We have a huge, like a lot of people working on this, in addition to Lorenzo too. I know Josh has been doing a lot of work on the UI as well, and Melina too. We should shout out all of our friends.
It also got a built-in difficulty switch now. So
that's Melina's.
If you want a different difficulty, you can, even do that. I love that part. But
Melina just added this translation service that is
I'm
powered
not going to
by...
torture you with that now, though. So we're just going to stay with what hopefully everyone can read.
Excellent. So let's get started. As you said, everything is a task inside in the GameDay. We see we've got 7 tasks to do. There is a path and a story and an arc to this. So let's dive straight in, Dominic and Lorenzo and AM. Let's get started and see, can we do this first task?
Yeah, that's going to get hard. So the tasks are just to give you a little bit of an idea. Where am I in the quest? How far am I? And one of the things that's going to happen is that the first couple of tasks are rather easy to make it easy to get started for you. And then, can you explain in Hindi? Oh, no, I'm still in the midst of learning Hindi. And my colleagues Harsh and Mohit are still trying to get that into my head, but we're not there yet. So the idea is to start out easy, and then in the end, it actually gets quite tricky, so that you got something to actually puzzle over properly, I guess. And one of the first things we're going to start with is just introduce those who haven't worked with MongoDB before, or maybe just are very new, to get started and get familiar with the things you'll encounter when you actually use Atlas, right? And one of the things you get with those game days, usually, you'll also see it on the AWS side in a moment, you will usually get a demo account.
Yeah, maybe a quick remark here while Dominic is logging in. And this is another distinction between a game day and a typical workshop, right? In a game day, we integrate the partner products within AWS out of the box, meaning the participants don't have to register for a trial account or have their own credentials or bring anything with them except the laptop. They log into the GameDay platform and they have everything they need. Usually in an initial infrastructure already set up with them. In this case, already a MongoDB Atlas account already set up. The credentials are given to them. I hope no one is copying the password right now and trying to mess up with your account. But that's a big distinction because it allows participants to get straight into the game, removing all the overhead or having to set up the environments and create accounts, etc.
Can I ask, what is MongoDB Atlas and why is it one of my favorite products? I actually know what it is, but for anyone who doesn't.
That question,
that
question sounds so that as if you were about to explain it yourself anyway, if it's your favorite product, right? But I'll let Shane take that one. That's fine. You were about to start anyway.
Yeah, no. So Atlas is our database as a service, essentially, and we are cloud agnostic. We have our favorites. We won't mention who they are, but 2 of them working on this stream work there. But in essence, we can run across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud as well too. And in essence, this is our developer data platform. So it's MongoDB. The DB is in the name, but we're much more than a database now. We've built on services upon services. So now you can see up the top there, there's data services, which was where you'll find your projects and your clusters and your collections, etc. App services gives us a whole host of essentially developer tools and shortcuts and kind of handy, I suppose, getting you out of the box quicker. We've got tools and templates that are there that you can use, regardless of what language you're developing in. We have support in across, I think, 13, 14 drivers. We also have a data API. We also have a CLI, and you can work with MongoDB in many, many ways, regardless of what language, what platform you're using as well, too. And we build in on top of that, then we've got triggers. We've got data federation for archiving older data. We have search powered by Lucene on top of that. So it's native search built on top of the database. It works straight out of the box as well, too. So there's a whole host of features there. If you are not familiar, simply jump across to mongodb.com and create a free account. We have a nice, generous free tier that you can get started, which is ideal for your MVPs or your kind of proof of concepts. And we have a bunch of tiers above that, but we also have Atlas Serverless, which is purely paying for your compute and your bandwidth and your storage, and a pay-as-you-go service for that as well, too. So that's the end of the pitch.
What don't you all have? I mean, that's what I wanted to ask.
The list is short.
It's amazing.
Lots of good stuff. And the other thing, too, is that we enhance all of this good stuff by our integrations with our partners. So if you go to that URL, mongodb.com/MongoDB on AWS, you'll see how, as we like to say, everything's better together as well, too. So please check that out. If you're familiar with AWS and you want to see how you bring MongoDB into it, you'll get all the answers that you need there.
Richard's about to try and sell you Cloud9 because that's what he works on. That's why he's asking about, do you have a web-based IDE?
Cloud9. Are we back to esports?
Yeah.
Well, we have nice. Well, we've a really good MongoDB plugin for VS Code. You can directly interface with the database without leaving VS Code as well, too. So, we're going to cover all the major IDEs. Anyway, we digress.
Good.
So you're in Atlas. Oh, you've jumped back out.
Yeah.
So
well,
what are we trying to do in this first task, Dominic?
Yeah, what's the first task?
I want to actually have a look at the first task and not just talk about it, so that we can actually see how such a game day quest works and what the typical tasks are. And as I explained earlier, it's like starting out very easy to give you like a chance to just like get settled into some new interface that you might not have worked with. So the start out quests are basically just like find your way around the UI and find out a couple of things. And what Shane just explained, the cluster that you're deploying, that you're starting with, which as I scrolled in earlier, is obviously on AWS, running what we call an M0, which is also the nice side effect. It's free. It's forever going to be free, and you can just like try out and work around. And the first quest is really just, what's the name of the cluster that has been set up? Just to give you like a moment to find yourself around to actually see what's going on here. And if I click on that cluster, I can get all kinds of information, but for now, I'm just going to copy that name, paste that in here.
And in game day terms, this is what we call an input, and oftentimes inputs are used for question and answer. And this is one of the ways that we interact with you as a participant, right? And as you said, Dominic, it's just like checking that you found the right answer. Mm-hmm. That right answer has been registered by the quest developer somewhere and goes in and checks. So that it's being set dynamically based. It's not a static answer there. But oftentimes you'll also, when you're playing game day, things will happen to you and to your account that seemingly you didn't do, right? We call those chaos events, right, Lorenzo?
Yes, as in real life, right? Basically, the purpose of game day is to simulate real life situations, real life scenarios, so that So as I was saying before, what you learn here, you can apply in real life. So real life things happen, things break. Perhaps someone switched a button on the network side and broke something in production. So you have the points are pressuring you to fix this in your life is your boss. But that's the whole concept of GameDay. Yeah.
And one of the real life things we have to do at some point is we want to somehow connect to our database, no matter if we use the drivers or the data API that Shane mentioned earlier, or several app service features. There's going to be a way how we connect to the database and actually get data in or out. And one of those, that's the second task that we asked participants to do in this quest, is to find what we call a connection string. So if I look down here, just to give you like a first quick idea of what that's going to look like, you see it looks basically just like a URL with a couple of credentials and some kind of protocol down here. And that's where it, for the first time, gets a bit not say tricky, but where you have to do a bit more than just like copy paste the string that's on the screen anyway. And you actually have a look around a bit. How can I actually connect the cluster, right? And then participants have to inspect the interface a little bit more and might find a connect button flying around there. And before you even get to connecting to your cluster, you have to go through a couple of security settings to even be able to connect to it. And I'm just going to set up an IP here, and I'll just go with this one and have a password for a database user. Those are the credentials that we just saw, right? And now I'm good to go here, and then I can choose a connection method. And then the participants basically get faced with all those options here, and the drivers is, I think, what Shane mentioned earlier as well. So I'm just going to start out here and read a little bit through what can I do with it? What kind of languages? You said like 13. Let's see if that's correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13. Perfect.
Yeah.
So we've got the 13 languages in here that you can use and choose your version. To get an idea of how am I even going to install the MongoDB drivers, and how's the connection string going to look like. Doesn't matter which language I choose, the connection string is going to be the same, but we even going to give you like a hint on how to like get the drivers depending on which language and platform you use. So all I'm going to do here now, I'm just going to copy that connection string to come back over here.
Now, is GameDay listening to our audio right now, and could it tell that Shane got the right amount of drivers, and will it give him points?
That's the next phase of GameDay, surely, you know?
Yeah.
More listening, more AI, more natural
feature
language,
requests.
all of the things. You mentioned, Dominic, there the hint, you know, that you have to browse around, but we have hints in GameDay as well too.
Yeah.
Tell us about those, because if you liberally go through those, you get points deducted, right? AM Lorenzo?
I'll show you in the next task, because there's a couple helpful ones. I mean, they are helpful too, but that we can straight away easily show and use. But that's what it's about. So the idea is basically on the one side, we'll give you tasks to do to help you on to learn something, but in case it gets a bit too complicated, and that's where we have to go back to what I said earlier, that not everyone is on the same level of expertise with the tools that they're working on. Some people might be more experienced, some people might be less experienced. It doesn't even matter how experienced you are. Sometimes you face a task and it's like, how the hell does that work? So sure, you can start using search engines or AIs and all that out there, but that's obviously not the goal of that. We want you to just like fiddle around a little bit and figure it out yourself. But in some cases, you simply can't. And that's where the hints come in. So if I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do, and task number 3, that's the one I'd like to use as an example here, is where we ask the participants to figure out what the price of one of our products is that is in the database. And let me just go to the database first to give you an idea of.
I just have to interject there too. I am constantly underselling myself. I'm worth a lot more than I think I am.
So one of the things. This is not
a review process, AM. This is
okay.
It's like, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do from here.
I thought this was a job interview. So my only weakness is that I care too much, and I show up too early to work. Those are my
Don't take any lunch breaks. Yeah.
I want you in my team, AM. I definitely have to hire you. We need you.
So the hints are, I mean, as you said, Dominic, we want this to be an enjoyable task and like a fun activity for somebody doing the game day. So we're not going to beat them over the head if they don't know the answers. We're going to consecutively reveal the answers as they go through. That's why you've got 5 hints. You're being super nice to people, right?
Well, they also cost. So
they cost.
It's debatable if we're really nice, but it depends on how many hints you need. And for that task here, the question is, what is the current price for such a central processing unicorn, right? The CPU. And you have to figure that out. So if I come back here and I found my way to the collections over here, and see the products, sure, I can just go through and I can step through, but you quite quickly see, or might even notice up here, there's just too many. You're not going to step through and actually find it yourself. So I have to figure out how can I even search here. And those tips are basically step-by-step guides, if you have to, around all the questions that you might have. Where can I find the products in the first place?
Here's a tip though. I gotta give a tip real quick. Before you click on any of those hints, you can actually read some of these hints and figure out some of the stuff for free from the hints. I cannot find the right filter. Okay, I can read that and be like, I need a filter here. Like, where's the filter in MongoDB? So I don't even have to pay for these hints, and they're still helping me.
Yeah.
And Lorenzo, just to make sure,
always.
For the clever developers out there, Lorenzo, who think they might have one up on you in the web interface, you cannot right-click and inspect the code to see what those hints are, can you?
No, absolutely not, because there's a backend. So this goes through usually Lambda functions. So no, you can definitely not use the inspect the code.
Yeah, displaying a hint is an API call. Sorry.
There you go.
So you did it.
You're trying to get one over the system, and in doing so, you're going to get deducted points in the first.
There's not much in there.
Yeah, but you raise a good point, which ties the conversation we were having earlier about points, right? And competitions. That game day is a competition, and no matter what the prizes are, like it could be a little puppet, or it could be just plastic medals, mouse pads, or just points. Things get heated, and it's a real competition. It's so. What I'm trying to say is that it's important. This is another aspect different from workshop. Workshop, you don't have to worry about cheating, right? But in game day, people can technically find ways of cheating, especially because game day is pretty complex. It has a lot of variables in the back end. So that's a hard part, actually, when it comes to developing a quest or a game day, thinking of all the possible ways teams can cheat and try to fill those holes. And if there's something you didn't plan for it, then you put it in as a feature. You say that's okay. There was planned that you could cheat the way, and if teams take advantage of that, yeah, be it. You give them points because they figure out the way. But yeah.
And there's one thing that's guaranteed: if you leave a loophole open, someone's gonna find it.
They will find it.
There is always someone. Yeah. So it's a good thing that those hints are at least hidden behind an API call. So you have to pay your points. So
look. As Kevin Costner said, nothing's free in Waterworld. Okay, we're not going to give you a hint for free. Well, some quests do actually.
Let me try to get one hint.
Don't Google Waterworld, or don't try and find it on a streaming platform.
Greatest movies ever made.
No, it really isn't. So that's what one of those hints might look like. Let's disregard those four, because maybe with AM's idea of, hey, let's read the hints and maybe they give us an idea. We made our way over here.
I noticed filter in the MongoDB UI.
It costs something.
Oh yeah.
So I made it to the filter, but what am I going to do here, right? And if I use the last hint here, I'm going to get an idea of like, what could I even do, and how does the filter look like, and which filter do I need? So if I just copy this one, so I paid the 1,000, but I might as well use the information. I'm going to paste it in here, and let's see what happens now. That doesn't look too bad.
Hey.
What am I actually supposed to do? Let me close this one. What's the current price for a central processing unicorn? And one of the things that people then can figure out, that can click around and can actually work with the information that is in here. For now, I'm only going to paste it right here.
A little shout out here to Mark in MongoDB. He came out with the CPU term, central processing unit, which I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, the theme is great. The references throughout, even the USD, unicorn special dollars. You know, it all just flows. It's great. It's got longevity.
So look at that. That worked.
We got that one right too. That's the price
Yeah,
we're looking for.
yeah.
So
And
now
then-
we're saying we want to change this price because it's too cheap for these highly trained unicorns.
Yeah, we're always underselling. So that's where that's basically where we go step by step. First, we teach them how to find their way around the UI. Then we have to actually look at data. We have to read data, and then the next step basically is want to update such a thing that we call a document.
I see a link in there too.
There is a price, and I can also open the link. And that will show you, if I scroll in a little bit so you can see that, the bits and pieces of the documentation you need. So what you'll find quite often in, let me see if it's actually up here as well, exactly. What you find quite often in those task descriptions is links to those tools or parts of information that you need or anything that could be interesting. Some of them might be a red herring. You don't need to read up on the data API and compass and drivers right here in task number 2, but you pick and choose what you want and what you need. And definitely this link is going to be a helpful one.
Well, that's one of the hallmarks of a good quest in GameDay too, is that it's not prescriptive. It's not telling you, go do this way, right? So you listed out a bunch of different choices for people to go update the price, but you didn't tell them you've got to use the CLI to do it. You got to use the Node SDK to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, I could as well write a script now to actually update the price, but we're totally fine with them doing it in whatever fashion they want and just come over to the UI, because at least for those tasks you can of course also work here, and it doesn't have to be something that's automated. So I'm gonna insert the price here, which is one thing that I can do right in the UI. I can update it here. And now we're not underselling anymore. Isn't that great? So we're gonna
not underselling. We've just increased the price 6-fold, though. Somebody's getting ripped off somewhere.
Yeah.
That central processing unit just had some therapy, really addressed its emotional issues, built its self-esteem, and now this is what it's worth. That's just how it is, Shane.
The price just hasn't been updated in 10 years, That's like, we just had to adjust it properly. It's
and the really good thing I find in this too, you answer there ready, and you click submit. So the game interface goes off, checks the database, makes sure you've changed that price, and then comes back and lets you through to the next task.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
it's also not just going to let you through. So
yeah.
So this dangerous life demo, it might just work,
Yeah, this is kind of one of the behind the scenes pieces of a game day, right? So there's several accounts operating, AWS accounts operating when you play a game day, right? There's the one that you can log into, but there's also one that you can't. And oftentimes when you're developing a quest, this is where you're going to put shared infrastructure. This is where you're going to put infrastructure that teams aren't supposed to be able to alter. And this is also where you're going to be able to assume a role into every team's account and check on things that are going on in there. So you can score points or deduct points based off of all kinds of different avenues. Basically whatever you can do in AWS with an assumed role into an account is what you can do. So you can actually come in, we could, if you've got an EC2 instance, for example, we could shut it down, right? From this other account that you don't have access to as a participant. That's where the chaos really comes in. That's where the interactivity really comes in.
Yeah, and task 5 is the task where the fun part then finally starts, and we see a little bit what's going on, and that there is actually an integration and how the integration works. And as I said earlier, the steps get a bit more complicated after a while. So first we just had to figure out what's even the name of our cluster. And now all of a sudden there is quite a bit of architecture and explanation around what's going on and what are we implementing here. And just to show you right away, for that task, it's going to be the HTTPS endpoints here. and that gives the participants a chance to look into a second part of let me just scroll up here, of what the what Atlas provides. And we've so far only worked in the data services, but Shane mentioned it earlier. There's something called app services, and app services provides loads of functionality. Where did I just click? To to actually enhance your
see, it's a live demo.
Yeah, it's a live demo. Isn't that great?
We're missing a bunch of features here.
It says you don't have permissions there. You don't have permissions to view app services.
Yeah, permissions are important. We take that seriously, you know.
Did you whitelist IPs and things at the setup?
Yep. So there's two different things here. So what even I heard that.
Did you guys see it?
Yeah,
Your AI is amazing there.
Yeah.
It's working. That was loud and clear, as if you had planned it, Lorenzo. Just in a lull in the conversation, and the cow comes in, or the sheep. What was it?
A sheep, yeah.
Yeah, this is quality live streaming, folks.
Wow.
The sheep clearly understood there's something happening that shouldn't be happening. And
yeah.
Someone has to distract everyone now.
That sheep is heckling us.
That's a super sheep. So I'm just gonna have a look into what's off screen.
So while Dominic is doing this, I'll interject here and tell you, when you are in a game day as a participant, things go wrong. Things go wrong both for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons. And this is why game days are always staffed by wonderful people we call operators from AWS, right? So operators and support staff are almost always guaranteed to be at a game day event, if not always guaranteed to be at a game day event, there to help you. So if something like this does happen to you, you can usually flag someone down to get help, right? Be it virtual or in-person game days. So Dominic, unfortunately for him, is one of the operators for this. He's got to fix his own problem.
That's what it is, yeah. And things like that always happen. That's why we're there. If one of our quests is been running, and if something unexpected happens or expected happens, doesn't matter what you have to do. We will be there to help you and figure this out, or just simply solve it for you if it's not an issue created by you, which is what I'm doing here on the side.
Support's also there, not just for when things go wrong in the wrong way. Exactly. They're also there if you get stuck, like even if nothing is going awry in your various accounts that you're using to play the game day. Just if you get stuck, and even the hints don't help you, right? Like we have support staff there that you can talk to that are very approachable, very nice people that are experts. So we take special efforts to get everyone prepared before a game day event. We have all of these assets that can help people understand how some of the approaches you can take to solve some of the challenges the Quest developers set up, and the support staff are briefed on all of those. So they're there to help you. Yeah. Have I bought you enough time, Dominic?
No, you haven't.
Okay.
Anyway, anyone got any jokes? No. The other thing I love about the in-person setup of the game days is that you have the leaderboard up on a large screen most of the time.
Right.
And so that brings, as Lorenzo says, the competitive element to it, because you're there, your team names are up there, you see the scores associated with your team and the other teams. And then there's this leapfrogging kind of nature that happens as you start to complete the tasks. I think, that in itself goes, oh, we're behind now. Hold on. How do we get ahead? How do they manage to get so far through to the next task so quickly? I love the nature of that as well.
Yeah. And one interesting thing about the hints again is that for example, game day, you might have teams trending in the thousands and thousands of points, like 200K, 300K. And then some team sometimes is stuck in one task, right? And there's a hint that would greatly help them unstuck. And maybe the hint costs 100 points. They won't take it because they're so stubborn. Said, no, I'm going to fix this thing by myself. So it's fun to see from the outside the kind of passion how people tackle the game day in different ways. Perhaps a more junior person might just take the hint and move on. Someone more stubborn might really want to solve things themselves, because to be honest, that's how you really learn things, rather than using the hints. The hints actually are relatively new feature. We didn't used to have them before. I think we started adding them when we started integrating the partner solution with the game day, because obviously there's a problem, but a challenge there. Because one thing, if you put the MongoDB quest in front of an AWS audience, they probably might struggle a little bit more than you if you run the MongoDB quest at a MongoDB-led event where people are already familiar with MongoDB, right? And maybe the other way around, maybe something about AWS, MongoDB, people that are familiar with MongoDB might not be familiar with how to solve an AWS problem. So hints also, that's where they come in and help you unstuck.
Excellent. And is there a trade-off, Lorenzo, between
get me unstuck?
I don't want to take the hint because I'm going to lose marks, but I'm taking longer to finish this without the hint, right? How does that work, or does it depend on each game day?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Quests don't have to implement bonus points for completion time, but oftentimes they do. You may not be told ahead of time that speed depends. Some quests let you know. We played a quest on Step Up Your Game Day earlier this week, I think, or maybe last week, where there was a timer, which is a big problem if you're playing with this guy, because if you can't tell, I can turn a 30-minute quest into a 2-hour and 30-minute quest with the way I talk. So we didn't actually even finish that quest. But yeah, I mean, that's all part of the strategy, right? Like Lorenzo's saying, if you're so stubborn to not take a 100-point hint, and it could have unlocked you to finish the quest in record speed, you may make those 100 points up back in bonus points. You just have to weigh your options. That's why good communication in your team.
And Irina, who asks, what is a game day? I'm assuming you just came late to the party. This is all about game day, and it is being recorded, so you will get the recording up on MongoDB YouTube channel live afterwards, and you can go back over that and find the various explanations, iterations, and details of game day that we've gone through so far. Dominic, you look as if you've got over.
I just wanted to mention this. I think next time we should have a game day that is a game day that trains you to be a dungeon master. I think that's an amazing idea. We should do that as well. But yeah, you guessed correctly. I'm here now, back to app services, which is where I stopped a second ago. And that's, as Shane mentioned earlier, a suite of additional features and functionality that you can use to build on top of your Atlas cluster. There's a couple of settings on how to name it. I'll just jump over that and leave it on the defaults. And then if you remember and close the guides, we'll do that for now. If you remember what Shane said earlier, a couple of those will be familiar. Functions, triggers. I think you mentioned HTTPS endpoints as well. You might have mentioned that data API as well, I think. And there's loads of other really neat stuff, like authentication, which is something that we'll use in a second as well. GraphQL might be a familiar term for a lot of you out there. And if I'm just gonna divide the screen here, let me know if that's too small. And if I'm gonna look at the quest again, we'll once again go a step further now and give participants an option to actually go through the app services and learn a little bit about that. And the three features we'll look at that: authentication, functions, and HTTPS endpoints, which enable you to build your own REST service on top of your cluster built in inside of Atlas. And that's the thing that participants will do in that case. So I'll give that route a name, which is Let's see, what kind of name can we give that one? It's time to make some money. We'll call this the money endpoint. How about that? They, as part of that quest, just as an example, they'll have to write a function. We'll provide that because who in the world wants to write JavaScript live on stream? So I'm kind of like providing that to myself as well, right? We make them write a function, which I'm going to call money as well, because it's all about the money in that quest, in that task, and the whole quest actually.
The classic capitalist Irishman. I mean, that's just
Yeah, right. I mean, so yeah, that's about all I have to do here, which is also super neat and easy to create an HTTPS endpoint. I'm not gonna go into the details of that because that's not what it's about. We wanna show you what the participants will do here during one of those quests, and that's just telling me I need to deploy this because the neat thing is that whenever I make a change, I can make sure I didn't screw up and actually did everything correctly. There's one more thing I have to do here. I'll do that, the money function, right? The money function, and that's where authentication comes in. I have to update that as well. And now I can actually deploy that. And that's going to teach the participants a bit about how am I going to set up my own HTTPS endpoints? How am I going to write functions? What do those functions do? What can I do with those functions? So if you look a bit more into the documentation, you'll see that there's different ways to authenticate, to actually call those HTTPS endpoints. And sure, that's just one feature that you can use in the app services. But I mean, 45 minutes is not that long, so unfortunately, we can't show you all those functionalities. So that's
a different stream. We'll get to that. They happen.
Exactly.
They happen.
So that's what you're going to get as part of this specific quest. And I'm just going to quickly go over here again because the whole URL for that endpoint is going to be shown here, and I'm going to copy that, which, as you'll see down here, is what this task actually wants me to put in here, and not just my random gibberish. And then I can submit this again. And if I enlarge that a bit, while that is actually checking out what's happening. So I just created this HTTPS endpoint here, which in the next quest we'll see is the preparation to actually get the integration running with what I think AM explained it a bit earlier. There's like some kind of account that is doing something, and there's going to be like a team account, a team AWS account, which is going to be the interesting part that we'll finally get to in the next task, where the team can actually not just set up something on the MongoDB side that can be used to, I don't need that one here, that can be used to accept the data. That's in that case what this HTTPS endpoint is for, because it's a post endpoint. So I'm going to go down there. I'll see the missing puzzle piece is the next step here. And now we can actually like get into the integration and actually figure out how do we connect those two things? How do we connect? And I might actually make this for a moment at least bigger again. How can we?
It'd be good to keep the diagram there and talk about what we're connecting.
I was going to ask, like, is the point of an HTTPS endpoint here to reduce the need to throw around database credentials all over different places, and instead you could have more control over, like the actual write to the database or read from the database will happen over in MongoDB, Atlas, so you don't have to pass around credentials, but instead, like the HTTPS endpoint has its own credentials that limit what the action of that HTTPS endpoint can take. Is that the point?
Yes and no. I mean, there is it could be, but in that case, the system authentication that I'm using is just for this demo scenario, making it easier. Right. You would usually always have some kind of authentication and credentials somewhere, because you want to make sure that only those actually allowed to connect to the database do. But the HTTPS endpoint is just one of many ways. We've talked about the drivers earlier, which is probably one of the most popular ways to actually realize that, which is a set of or is a library that you can use in whatever language you'd like to use, out of those 13, of course, but those should be the most important ones. So you can use the drivers, you can use HTTPS endpoints, you can use the data API that we mentioned, which is a different form of HTTPS endpoint. Without going too much into the details about that, you can use GraphQL. So there's just multiple different ways that you can leverage to more or less achieve a similar goal. They're a little bit different here and there, but it all depends on what you need. The neat thing about the HTTPS endpoints is you don't have to write your own server. You don't have to write your own service. You just get that very simple HTTPS or REST. Let's just call it a REST service, a REST service on top of Atlas. And you can, of course, write your functions, which are JavaScript, so you can do everything that JavaScript offers to you. And for most use cases, that might be enough. In other use cases, and we got another live stream about a demo that we're doing, which is called Leaf Steroids, that's hosted on AWS as well, where we implemented a demo server on EC2, which is doing a little bit more than the HTTPS endpoints are doing. And this one, for example, is using the drivers. So the choice was, okay, we need to implement our own server. It needs to run on an EC2. Now we're going to use drivers. We could still connect to the HTTPS endpoints from that server, but you simply have different options and different ways that you can choose. And they, more or less depend a bit on which scenario you're in. And it's a bit similar to the AWS side of things. There's often you'll find that a service that you're using is just one of many different options, and there's just many different services for a similar use case, which help you to choose the right service for your use case and what you want to achieve, what you're trying to achieve. Like, let's stick with the EC2 example. So it's the other demo, but I think it's a great comparison. I can either use an EC2 directly if I want that to, but I'm also running a website for that other demo where I was using an AWS Beanstalk, which makes it super easy to not even have to configure an EC2 and take care of everything that I would have. I'm just starting my Beanstalk. I'm just uploading my zip file, and then the website is just running. It's still using EC2 behind, and it's setting up a kind of system service for the system to reboot, and it makes sure that the security groups are in place, and everything works the way it should. So it's a different access to exactly the same thing, depending on what I need. More control, less control. More convenience, less I'm pretty sure I'm not choosing less convenience, but you get my point. Control over convenience, maybe. So different scenarios, but the same solution. And that's basically the same with the HTTPS endpoint, functions, drivers, data API. In all those cases, you're doing something on the database, but depending on your scenario, you're doing like you're choosing a different way. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Cool. That makes sense. Yeah. So like if you need full functionality, everything you can do, period, like I'll probably go for the driver. If I just need something simple, and maybe I can't even have a driver where I'm calling, where I'm making the call from. I just can make an HTTP call.
Exactly. It might just be that you're using a language that simply doesn't have a driver yet, which is one of the obvious cases where, okay, you don't have the driver, you have to use the data API or HTTPS endpoints.
Makes sense.
And it also depends on how much you want to expose. The data API is a bit more generic. The HTTPS endpoint is a bit more specific, if I may want to summarize that. So you have to have I guess if you choose at first, you have to have a look at what's there, when can I use it, what would I use it for, and then make your decision. There are several different ways, that for that case, we chose the HTTPS endpoints.
Okay, so jumping back to this stage now, task 6, we have our endpoint, we put in our function there. Our cluster can receive new orders, but it's not connected yet with AWS, with our app tier.
Exactly.
So those orders are not getting through. So we're going to connect these up, right?
Yeah, that's the interesting part now. So in the previous quests, we've started with what's on the MongoDB side, figure out a database, set up a cluster, set up the HTTPS endpoint that we just did. But now, and that's called the AWS data tier account, that's the one where we will be working in a second, is where we need to figure out how can we even connect that. And in this quest, without reading out the whole quest now, what we'll basically do is those 3 arrows that you see here, from something that's called an app tier account. There's a simple queue service that we use. So this queue service is getting activated, and then starts the store order service function on Lambda. And that Lambda function is then using the HTTPS endpoint to actually get the data in here. And the integration of those two is what participants would face in this quest. And that's, once again, it's the next step. Now it's getting a bit more, I don't want to say complicated, because it's the same level of complicatedness, but it gets more interesting because now we got two services running around,
bit
right?
more
We've got
involved,
MongoDB on one side, and we got AWS on the other side. And how can we make those two actually work together as a team to finish our Unicorn Supplies website? And that's where they probably, at least for this quest, get into an AWS account for the first time. Lorenzo, do you want to shout a couple of sentences about the setup here and the fact that that's not even the same way the MongoDB account is not an account that someone has to bring with them, but they actually get a test or a play account for them that they can actually play around with in a very risk-free environment, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, something I mentioned earlier, right? Whenever you sit at the table and you're ready to play the game day, you're provided with everything. So there will be a button somewhere that says AWS console. So each team will share the same AWS account. Yeah, exactly the one. And it will take you to your team's AWS account. Each team will have their own AWS account, right? Again, you don't have to provide the AWS account yourself. It's not your company's AWS account. It is something we provide to you as part of the experience. And you will find, once you log in, you'll find everything that you need in there. In this case, there will be already part of that solution already deployed. You have to just make the link, in this case, between the Lambda and the MongoDB side. Besides configuring, I think, the SQS service. There is an ask about that, if I can recall.
Yeah, perfect. So let's just start there right away. I'm going to go to my Lambda. And there is the receive order and store in MongoDB function that we'll find here that is already pre-configured in participants account. And now I can look into that. And what I said earlier about setting up those 3 arrows is basically the first one is the Lambda on the app tier account has to trigger the simple queue service, which then talks to the Lambda, and then this one sends the data via the HTTPS endpoint. So I got my Lambda function here that needs to be triggered by the SQS. So I will search for SQS here, and then one of the convenient things here is that I get automatically shown what options do I have here. There's a MongoDB store order queue that I can use, and that's what the participants will set up here. The rest is just going to be a default, and then I've set up a trigger to actually execute this function. The second thing that we tell them to do, in that case, there's a couple of steps that they tell them what they actually have to do, is also setting up the HTTPS endpoint that we set up earlier. So if I go over here and copy our money endpoint again, and come down here to the environment variables, you'll see part of this function that is already set up is an HTTPS endpoint. So they have to figure out how to actually configure my my environment variables for the Lambda function. And I'll just paste in the HTTPS endpoint here. That's number 2. And then actually the first one in that order, probably one of the most important ones, security. Because one of the things I obviously have to figure out is how am I even going to allow this thing to be connected to. So if I put yes here, to look also onto the other side. So that also is just like the MongoDB store order. I'll make that a bit bigger here. So one of the things that I'll notice, and this is where they'll learn about access policies and how to actually set that up and how that works, is over here in the SQS part. And one of the really neat things that they'll hopefully notice while they do that, one of those features that I really love, the policy generator. One of the things that I copied here is the ID that is called the principal. And we're in the Amazon SQS here. For now, I'm just going to choose all this demo to make it easier for myself.
Yeah, just for the general audience here, what Dominic just did, it's a very good example of how not to do things, right? Just putting a star in the ARN, but yeah, for the sake of the demo, that's fine. We'll let you pass on that one.
Thank you. You would usually, of course, choose exactly what you need here and pass in your number. And then the neat thing is what the policy generator is doing. It's just going to give you exactly the policy that you need. And as you see here, the star here and there should obviously be filled out exactly with what you want. But when you got that policy, you can then just insert it. And that's exactly what you need here to allow the connection between SQS and Lambda, as we've seen over here. And then we can try and see if that works. I'm just going to put in ready here because the GameDay platform doesn't need any kind of information from me here. I just need to say, okay, I'm ready. And then I can submit that. And then what's going to happen is we check, and that's something we mentioned earlier as well. We obviously always check if you actually did what you said you're going to do here. And yeah, we're actually going to check the homework, and we're actually going to send orders via the HTTPS endpoint to figure out if this works. And if that setup works, what's going to happen for this specific task in the background, there is a service which is running on an EC2. So that's a great coincidence here. That is then starting to continuously send orders. So if I go up to the score events, we might even already see that. Yeah.
Pro tip here, if you're confused about what's going on in a game day or you don't know what's going on in a game day, score events, go check that out. That's always going to give you some info about when you're doing the right or wrong things.
Excellent. We probably should have jumped in there a bit earlier to show how the scoring works and things. So what was the -1s for?
So this one is just a hint. You always lose 1,000.
Oh, that's when you did our hint. Okay.
And then earlier, I clicked on the HTTPS endpoint input without even setting up the HTTPS endpoint. And if you set up something incorrectly, we'll give you a little bit of a minus here. It's not too big because if you try it multiple times and we like subtract like 25K every single time, that might be a bit, might feel a bit mean, I guess. So it's just a smaller amount, so you can try it a couple times. But a wrong answer is basically like a hint. It doesn't seem like much, but it adds up, right? So if I use all the hints, or if I like put in the wrong answer 10 times in a row, it's gonna cost you. And one of the things that just came in here, pretty new, is there's consistently coming in orders now. That also seems like it's a small number, but this is gonna happen every couple of seconds or once a minute roughly. So that's gonna accumulate points while the quest is still running by sending them to that HTTPS endpoint. Okay. But that's that quest.
So we're on the last 7 of 7, right?
Yeah, that one.
We're going to reject some orders. Oh, we don't want. You want to sell some of this stuff.
That went quite quickly, right? So when
you don't want money, like.
Yeah, so something went wrong, and we obviously don't want those low prices that we've seen earlier, right?
Yeah, that's it. This is proper commerce now. We don't want to. Yeah, those people came in, bought it at $4,999. We don't want to sell them that, right?
It's not 4,000, 49,000, but it's still not enough. Unicorns are just like worth a lot more. I mean, the unicorns, come on. So
don't put a price on a unicorn. No, definitely not.
Okay. Well, we did actually.
Yeah, we literally did, but
we keep changing it though. We still can't actually put a price on the unicorn. We keep changing it.
Yeah, and the worst part is if you check over here, go to your collections. Obviously, one of the things you'll see, first of all, in case you noticed it earlier, there was just a products collection here. Now there's also an orders collection. Excellent. And the orders collection has some orders with prices that are just like old prices because they've come in before. We've updated the price for this product. So we got loads of central processing unicorns for the wrong price.
And that's the point. Retirement plan there is trading on the commodity pricing of unicorns, the volatility of that market. So,
well, there's certainly some volatility if you look at the price change that we've done, right? So that's probably a good idea. And like what we asked them for the last task is just to once again just try another feature that they haven't used before. As before, they could just go in here and do that manually and just reject all those orders, which is what we're actually, let me just go back to this here. So what we're asking them to do is look for the product name, central processing unicorn, and the price, and make sure they all get the status rejected. And there's basically two things they learn here, or like two main things that they learn here. One of them, that the schema is flexible, and even though this document already exists the way it is, with the central processing unicorn and the price, I can still add more information to that. And sure, I can also do that in the UI here, but as you can see, there's like many of those products, so that wouldn't be really that much fun. So the last task is then going to teach them something about what we mentioned before, which is the data API, which offers us a bit more of a generic way than the HTTPS endpoints. I could also implement another HTTPS endpoint to do what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to use the data API to give myself access to, and you see it here, to the typical CRUD operations that I'd like to have to work on my collections. One of the things I have to do, I'm going to choose a data source.
Need some hold music here now. Any of those guitars behind you, AM, work?
Oh, that would be so
No, they're just decorative.
good. Really? One day I want you to play something.
Okay.
We have to hear you at some point.
Be prepared. Be prepared. Next live stream.
All right.
Be live, AM live on the live stream.
I'll do my my best Jimi Hendrix and the Star Spangled Banner, basically. Right?
No Stairway to Heaven, though. That's banned. That's forbidden. Can't play that.
No Stairway? Denied.
No.
Is this a Wayne's World? Are you doing a Wayne's World right now?
But yeah. You just can't play that. It's not. It'll never sound as good, even a fraction as good. So don't play it.
You don't think I could pull off Jimmy Page? Come on.
I don't know if that's enough or if that's enough. But what I'm trying to, while you keep talking about guitars, so what we'll show them here is basically get an API key and get some code. You could also just use a curl here. One other neat thing about the data API here is you get some examples. So that's now, because my browser is so zoomed in, it scrolls a little bit here, but it's more or less the same code that you'll see in a second that I already transferred, because I'm going to use Python here.
Yeah, why the Python choice? Is that your preferred language, Dominic?
No,
You're gonna walk into that trap that I just set for you? Say that you have a favorite language and that it's better than the other languages or something?
No, I mean, C# is better anyway, but
oh, definitive.
No, there is no better or worse. I speak all the languages, and somehow none of them perfect, and that's just what it is. But you can choose from whatever you want, and I guess the only reason I chose Python here is because the Gameday is implemented in Python.
You were doing it for Lorenzo.
There is no more fun reason than that. I wish I had a really great story and an explanation about why that pop-up keeps popping up and going away. I'm not doing anything. Otherwise, I might have just chosen C# probably. Yeah. The only thing that I can tell you that you never want to choose is JavaScript, because who wants to ever write JavaScript?
Another personal preference.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Yours truly just went ahead and built a bunch of JavaScript tools for GameDay. So there is now a TypeScript version.
Why did you not just use Python or C# though?
Well, Python already exists, obviously, for GameDay. C#, there you go. I'll put that in a feature request. I'm a C# dev.
I hear Go is pretty amazing. I've never written a line of code in Go, I think.
I think you've hit your throttle limit for feature requests, Dominic. Just kidding.
Damn.
All right, Go and C#. I'll put it in.
I could have written it in C# or any other language. And the neat thing about that, and I kind of want to click on it again, the neat thing about that is obviously participants can do whatever they want. So they can write it in the language of their preference. I mean, some people still use Java, I've heard. So you could even do that if you really want to, or you can actually just do it on your terminal and send a curl request. Because in the end, what it is, the data API just offers you box standard HTTP as a request, right? So you can do whatever you prefer. Which is one of the generic points about it. That's quite neat. I chose
teams fight it out then.
Yeah, exactly. And this is more or less what you just saw in that pop-up. One of the code examples that we provide to you, and the only thing that I've basically done is copied in the data API URL, which you saw over here, and the key that I just created, that's going to be invalid in 5 minutes, so don't even bother writing it down. And the data source, because the data API is always connected to a certain cluster, and I have to specifically name that. So when I come down here and run that, hopefully going to work. Otherwise, I have to figure this out in a live demo as well.
More guitar time opportunity.
Yeah, right. So,
I've only got so many that I can set on fire.
what kind of guitars do you have back there? What can we choose from?
I've got a that's a Guild Starfire 4. Or there's a semi-hollow body guitar.
I've no clue what it is, but it sounds damn amazing.
And the next one is a Fender Jazzmaster.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's Elvis Costello uses that guitar.
Yeah. The only guitar I know are the ones that get delivered with Guitar Hero. So that's a plastic Fender.
What was that like?
With the
35 years ago? You're talking about Guitar Hero? Like what?
Yeah, it's roughly like that. I know I'm old. It's actually just 15 years old though. So
okay, all right.
But there you go.
Like 75, but okay.
That's what it feels like when you play it because it's actually really old, but I still love it.
I do too. I loved Guitar Hero actually.
Yeah, and it
makes
the
Fire and the Flames.
Sorry?
You know? Through the Fire and the Flames. One of the hardest songs on there.
Very good. Guitar Hero 3, that is, which is the best one of them. And I could talk about that for hours now, but I think we're
already over
anyway.
So
I'm trying not to.
I laughed at Shane when he said, "Yeah, this will be a max 90-minute."
Yeah.
Like, have you met me, Shane?
Bollock.
Yeah, well, I just hoping Lorenzo's battery manages to stay. So we'll see. He could, if he disappears unceremoniously from the stream, his battery's died.
Yeah, and probably sooner than that. I'm blending in with the background because it's getting dark. You cannot see me anymore.
Yeah, can you plug into one of the sheep or something? No, more battery.
Lorenzo, you have to update your green screen background. We can't work with that.
Yeah, I know.
Righto, Dominic, where are we? Hit us.
So what we did, we basically ran the example that I just got slightly modified to get that status in here. So there's obviously a little bit more down here going on.
We rejected 51 orders.
Yeah, so we rejected 51. So that's something has been done. Let's see if that was actually enough. So I can actually minimize those two, and now I can come over here and say ready again. Let's see if the
final ready.
Is a GameDay quest. The quest is happy with what we did there, or if we needed to modify more of those documents.
This is an improvement that Lorenzo also just made too. There's a button now in a recent release. So instead of having to type ready and click submit, there's an option now to create a button, just to click.
Ooh, nice. I have to update that. Amazing. I can't wait for that. So we're done.
What did you score? You flashed up there momentarily.
Look at that. Quest completed. I got some extra points.
You got the bonus points.
I got some bonus points. I don't even want to click on it because I can already see the result. But
wait, how did Dominic win?
Yeah.
Is that you? Is that you? Who's playing MongoDB TV?
No, we're MongoDB TV.
Dominic always wins. He runs a small script that just adds him to the top of any leaderboard. Doesn't
matter which demo we do, which workshop we go through, or whatever we show. I always make sure I'm on top.
Wow!
Because my competitive self can't handle not winning, so it has to be that way, you know.
Very interesting. We're getting into the psychology of Dominic now too. That's a bonus. Those are some bonus points.
Brilliant.
I mean,
well done.
The actual reason it was just a dry run, and as you can see, the dry run is still around. Look at that.
There you go. Well, you nearly scored what you scored in the dry run. You know, it must have taken a little bit longer to do it. Maybe that bit of code fixing in the middle there. So
yeah, that's the nervous part on the stream. You know, there was just no way we can make it to first place and get the same points.
Excellent. So look, we've done the game day. AM, Lorenzo, did we leave anything out in taking people quite quickly through this game day?
I was just going to mention also that we also played this over on the Step Up Your Game Day show. I was going to drop the link in for anybody who wants to watch that content as well. It was a lot of fun to get to meet you all and play this quest myself, actually. I don't think I did as well as Dominic, but
that was a fun stream because we, bar Lorenzo and Dominic, the other players did, including yourself, AM, had not done this before. So that was, proper, not have the creator of the quest play his own quest. This was fresh, unseen eyes playing the quest.
That's right. I hadn't played it before. But yeah, so I will always strive to achieve what Dominic achieves. I mean, that's basically what I've learned from that. Yeah.
Want to check that stream out? It's up on the screen there. Very easily rememberable URL, obviously. Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue there.
I love that 18207649663. That's my favorite show, that one. Yeah.
That's my employee number too.
Well, look, this has been superb. Thank you for those who stuck around. If people want to find out more about game days in general, you can jump on here, essentially. Go see all the lovely stuff that the AM, Lorenzo, and the rest of the team have put together.
It's just me and Lorenzo. That's it. I'm just kidding.
That's it.
We take full credit for everything that's ever happened. Only the good things.
And if you want to find out how MongoDB and AWS work together, if we've whetted your appetite with the integrations that Dominic showed there, jump there, which is super easy domain. MongoDB.com/MongoDB on AWS. And and the only other thing too is if you want to check out prior shows and upcoming shows, go to MongoDB.tv. Couldn't be simpler. Any last words, AM, Lorenzo, before we say adieu, or whatever it is in Swiss? I don't know. I'm just picking things out randomly to our audience.
It would be Servus.
Would it? Okay.
Could be. Many
We'll
options.
that one. Yeah.
Does the sheep have anything to say, Lorenzo?
No, I just want to reiterate, this is really a fake background, because if it wasn't, the family in the house behind would be a little bit worried I put them on the internet. So it's for a 2-hour-long show.
You didn't show any due care and consideration for the sheep that you put on the internet. Or do they not have rights? No?
That's true. But the other thing I wanted to say seriously is that we told you what a game day is. We even showed you how a game day unfolds. But if you really want to have the real experience, you had to come to play a game day for yourself. And I promise you, you're going to have fun. If you have a chance, come and reinvent. Otherwise, there are other events taking place all over the world. So we look forward to
Do you know when the next one is, Lorenzo? On the top of your head.
I do. Maybe it's not the it might not be the exact next one, but we have a game day going on at the New York Summit next week.
Well, that sounds like it could be very much the next one.
Yeah, it's next Wednesday. So if you're at the New York Summit next Wednesday, I'll be there.
Awesome.
So come see me. Come play some game days. Yeah,
I definitely want to play the LOL one, obviously.
Yeah. I don't know when the next Riot one is. That's I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that.
Oh yeah. It's on my to-do list now to figure out when that is and to book a ticket.
After I just said that Lorenzo and I take credit for everything and there is no team behind it, it's just me and Lorenzo, I actually want to correct that and thank the game day team. There is a large team behind this, and we all work together and we all love each other very deeply. So they're all incredible people to work with. They somehow tolerate me. And that is enough to win them incredible amounts of nothing else patient points. Right. So.
Excellent. Well, look, it's been a pleasure to have you on and participate. Thank you for joining us, Dominic. Thank you for taking us through the game day. So, we stream on Cloud Connect every Thursday. So join in for the future episodes. We get AM and Lorenzo back at some other time if we've got some other game day or something else to talk about too. But for now, AM in Austin, Texas, all the way over to Lorenzo hiding out in Switzerland. Don't forget the Toblerones. We want Toblerones when you come back, by the way. And Dominic and I in Ireland. This has been MongoDB TV Cloud Connect. Thank you all for joining, and we do appreciate it. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care. Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.